disasters across the continent, a pandemic, all sorts of issues. And I want to introduce you a little bit to the Community Foundation, but talk a little bit about the nonprofit sector, because I know you all are so involved with different charities in our community. I love that your fundraiser is for the Beach Food Pantry. I'm going to be talking about them a little bit. But I want to talk to you a little bit today about, well, the COVID pandemic and how that has affected nonprofits, how we in the community can help our nonprofit sector. Also top of mind for me, thinking about Hurricane Sally and all of these others in the ocean right now. We are at the 1-year anniversary of Hurricane Dorian, and I want to give you all an update on that and what happened a year ago and what our community is doing to help people who are continuing to struggle with that. So with that in mind, Outer Banks Community Foundation. I'm happy to talk to you a little bit about who we are and what we do, or maybe you all already know us and you don't need that, and I'll go right to other business. Does anybody want like the, who is the Outer Banks Community Foundation? I find that a lot of people know our name, but I'm kind of murky about what we do. So I'm seeing a nod, kind of know our name. Maybe a little quick version of it. Sure, absolutely. So the Outer Banks Community Foundation is, was founded in 1982. And we are a community foundation, which is a very specific type of charity. So a lot of times when you hear the word foundation, you think of like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or the Walmart Foundation, Blue Cross Blue Shield Foundation, which is usually one company or one family. They set aside some money, they invest it, and then they give it out to do wonderful things in the world. The community foundation takes that model and opens it to anyone. So rather than one fund controlled by one person or one family to do one thing, we are a whole collection of funds contributed by different people across the community for all different purposes. Anything charitable, if it's for the Outer Banks, we're involved in doing it. So let me use this clicker to get us to the next slides. So we manage these collection of charitable funds. They're mostly endowment, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what that is. We invest them, and then we use the earnings to give out grants and scholarships. In doing that, we're providing tailored services to donors. So people like you who want to do something wonderful for the Outer Banks and leave a legacy, you may work with us, and we help you give out grants and scholarships. So I want to mention one of our scholarship funds, which is the Lacey McNeil Scholarship, which you all started and contribute to. Goodness, and I know Carl is on Zoom. Maybe back in February, we worked with you all to take a look at that scholarship and figure out how to make it even more helpful for the community, because you all were giving out scholarships to graduating high school seniors, and most of our scholarships are for that. But you all were interested in really helping COA students do some interesting and new things. So we met with Carl and some others from your group to rework that scholarship. And now it's for College of the Albemarle students to do a service program abroad. Well, then COVID hit. So unfortunately, my update for you is that although you had an applicant for your scholarship, and we're working in partnership with COA for that, the service trip, which was supposed to be to Puerto Rico this summer, is canceled. But College of the Albemarle is very hopeful that you all will be able to do it in 2021. It's supposed to be in Thailand. And so hopefully Thailand will accept students coming abroad for service projects, and we'll move forward with it in 2021. But your scholarship funds, like all of the scholarship funds we manage, is what's called an endowment, which means it's a forever fund. It's invested, and like I said, we use just the earnings to make grants and scholarships. So we provide tools to the community. We provide groups like you, families, businesses, with different tools to leave a legacy, to help you support the causes that matter to you. So we're about $20 million in size. We've got about 190, almost 200 charitable funds. We've grown in our staff. We have 3 full-time and 3 part-time right now. We've got a volunteer board. Oh, thank you. And we've given out more than $10 million in grants and scholarships. And that number grows, frankly, with every week as we're cutting new grants and scholarships. So I wanted to just explain an endowment a little bit more to you, because it's a very exciting concept. Again, it's a perpetual invested fund. We only spend a portion each year. And what that means is that the fund grows, and while giving out grants or scholarships today, it will be doing that generations from now. So the example I like to point to is from the Ludemans. Did anybody know the Ludemans when they were alive? Dorothy and Charles Ludeman. She was an artist, and actually her husband predeceased her. She had a house in Southern Shores. She loved the Outer Banks. She loved supporting different arts causes. She passed away in the 1990s, and she left her house and its contents to the Outer Banks Community Foundation. And she gave us 2 pieces of instruction. She told us, sell my house, sell the contents. It included an art collection. Did you know Mrs. Ludeman?
Yeah, I did.
Very good. Yeah, there.
Okay.
I just want to make sure.
So she told us to do 2 things with her gift. She said, use this to help arts organizations, arts charities in the Outer Banks, and use a portion of it to help art students with scholarships attend. Oops. I'm looking at the screen to see.
Okay.
Okay. And so that's what we did with the gift. So we sold her house. We sold the contents. $357,000. So this, we received all of this in 1996. So what, it's almost 25 years later. So $357,000. And this is why I printed out my notes, because I have to remember these numbers. So as of this spring, we've used her gift to send 75 students to college. We have paid out $238,000 in scholarships. Right now, they're 4-year awards, $3,500 a year. These are some of our past Ludeman scholars. This was from a few years ago. Dancers, painters, graphic design, musicians, actors, any kind of arts. We've also given out $266,000 in arts grants. Dare County Arts Council, the Lost Colony, Theater of Dare, the Dare County Youth String Orchestra. This was one of my favorite grants in our history. We gave a grant to this nonprofit organization to buy a bunch of little violins for little elementary school children to learn how to play the violin. I think that's like the coolest thing ever, buying violins. So again, that math, $238,000 in scholarships, $266,000 in arts grants. That's $504,000. Again, the original gift was $357,000. But those funds are still there, they're still invested, they're still earning. And today's balance is $506,000. So in 25 years, her gift has tripled. It's given out more than what she put in, and we still have more than what she put in. And every single year we'll be doing grants and scholarships. So that's the power of investments. That's the power of the endowment sticking to just a 5% payout each year. 20 years from now, 50 years from now, we are still going to be giving out scholarships in her and her husband's names and still supporting local arts groups. So that's what we do. And it's a great line of work, and I'm very happy to be there. All right. A year ago, Hurricane Dorian hit. You all may know that the Outer Banks Community Foundation has been doing disaster relief for a couple decades for Dare County. But Hurricane Dorian was unlike anything we've seen since we were doing disaster relief. I've talked to you about endowments and how they're perpetual invested funds. When a hurricane hits, we raise money to help victims, but we don't put it in an endowment. We want to get it out to the community as quickly as possible, penny for penny, to people who have lost their homes or lost their possessions or lost their livelihoods. So this is the grand exception to the endowments that I was talking about. For hurricane relief, we get that money out as quickly as possible. So made landfall on September 6th. In the past, we have done all of our disaster relief work for Dare County, but we've always done work in Ocracoke. Middle of the hurricane, I'm getting calls and texts, Ocracoke is under 7 feet of water. We need to do something. So my board president, Scott Brown, who's a Rotarian, not your club, sorry, but he's a Rotarian, we opened up a fund for Ocracoke. I kid you not, that was Friday. By Monday morning, we had raised $350,000 to help hurricane victims. In total, we raised $1.5 million for hurricane victims. 1.2 of that for Ocracoke, $300,000 for Dare County. And let me tell you, it was needed. I'm actually going to go back a slide. 40% of Ocracoke households were displaced. So 40% of residents had no place to live. Either their homes were completely destroyed or it was uninhabitable. 88 out of 106 businesses were significantly damaged. And that's the entire economy. Everything you own, your furniture, your appliances, your car, your house, gone, your job, gone. No visitors until November. So for what, over 2 months, they didn't have any economy. It was really catastrophic. Now, Dare County was not unharmed. Dare County had a lot of damage too, mostly southern Hatteras, Hatteras Village, Buxton, Frisco, about $15 million in damage. So we think a lot about Ocracoke, but Hatteras got hit again, and Hatteras gets hit, as you all know, over and over and over again. So we raised $1.5 million, every single penny, to help families in need. So I want to give you the update on that and how many people we helped. Oops, and I don't have that slide. 350 households. I'm going off of my memory, and Marianne put this together. We helped 350 households get back on their feet. And I apologize that I don't have this on the slide, because Marianne worked hard on collecting these numbers. So 350 households that we helped, mostly in Ocracoke, but also in Dare County. All of that money is out, saved for about $350,000, which we are still using to repair, rebuild, and elevate homes. So this is all about coastal resiliency. We know that we're on a barrier island. We know that we live in a risky place. It seems like hurricanes are happening more frequently. Maybe they're more damaging. I'm not a scientist. I have no opinion on that yet. We know that we're building in risky places. Our solution, Southern Hatteras Island, mobile homes. Our most vulnerable families live in mobile homes. They tend to be in the lowest lying places. We found ourselves helping these families over and over again, hurricane after hurricane, when they were flooded. We're using the money we raised to elevate these homes. So we're in the middle of this project with Cape Hatteras United Methodist Men. They're elevating these homes up 11 feet because mobile homes don't qualify for homeowners insurance. It's considered personal property, so there's no money to do it. We're helping these families elevate because we've helped these same families hurricane after hurricane. So we're trying to make our community more resilient. In Ocracoke, we still have about 30 families in temporary trailers. Now, Hyde County got a grant from the state to purchase these trailers, but the donations that we collected from people like you, over 6,000 people contributed. We used that money to set up these trailers, give them utilities, do the anchoring, the foundation, all of that kind of stuff. We still have 30 families in these trailers. We are working on repairs and rebuilds. By the way, these are all for families who couldn't otherwise afford it. These are all for permanent residents. These are not, vacation homes. I mean, I'm terribly sorry if your vacation home was hit, but we're focusing our charitable dollars on people who need it most to help our most vulnerable in the community. So we're still doing work. It's a year later. We're in it for the long haul. We're still there doing work. So trying to get ready for the next storm. It's not a matter of if, but when. And I'll talk a little bit more about that concept a little bit later. But I want to talk about the other disaster that's really faced our community, which is COVID. Before I get there, I want to lay out the nonprofit landscape for you all, because I hear from so many businesses and donors, volunteers, people like you who are so glad to be in a giving community and participate themselves in volunteering and giving, but also see a very crowded nonprofit field and are sometimes a little overwhelmed with that. There are more than 200 nonprofits. I'm sorry, I skipped one. More than 200 nonprofits that serve the Outer Banks. More than 200 nonprofits that serve the Outer Banks. That's Dare County and Ocracoke. That is 2 times as many nonprofits per capita than the national average. So I think this speaks to a few things. One, it speaks to what a generous and giving community we are. There's so many donors here. There's so many volunteers. I mean, how many Rotary groups do we have? How many communities have this many Rotary groups? It's pretty incredible. So all of these nonprofits mean that there are a lot of community needs being met, and that's a wonderful thing. But does more always equal better? And there are challenges for having a crowded nonprofit sector. And I think one of those is that nonprofits sometimes find themselves kind of competing with each other for precious donations. There is a lot of work to keep up a nonprofit, as you all know. I mean, you've got all these tax filings, you've got all sorts of paperwork, you've got to register with the Secretary of State, you've got all sorts of requirements. And then to do it really well, you're evaluating your programs, you've got all sorts of whistleblower policies, maybe you're even doing an audit. It's a lot of work. So multiply that by 200, that's a lot of resources. So a question, I think, for our communities is more always better? And are we reaching our communities' carrying capacity in terms of number of nonprofits? Then COVID-19 hits and everything changes for everybody, families, businesses, and nonprofits. We did a survey of the Community Foundation of our nonprofit sectors. 55 responded. We were focusing on the nonprofits that serve only the Outer Banks. When I say 200, I do include some of the national groups that have a significant presence here, like the Nature Conservancy. Of course, they have Nags Head Woods. Didn't include them in this survey because they're in a whole different landscape. But this survey was all about, are you experiencing revenue losses? What impact is COVID having on your programs, on your operations, on your revenue? And the results were very scary. So we were just focusing on mid-March to April. So this was when our community was closed and our economy was really shut down. We estimate, so the nonprofits that responded experienced over $1.1 million in actual revenue losses. That was just 55. I would easily say that our nonprofit sector lost $1.5 to $2 million in revenue in just that short period of time. Now, we've been talking at our table about how the economy has really kind of rebounded here on the Outer Banks. Yet, I think there's still existential uncertainty for a number of nonprofits. So these revenue losses, canceled fundraisers, decreased donations, and also lost ticket sales and admissions from groups that really rely on selling tickets or people visiting their site. Well, all of that has changed in COVID. So half of these groups cut or furloughed staff, despite the Paycheck Protection Program, half of them cut. I believe that almost every nonprofit in the Outer Banks that qualified for a PPP loan did get one. We were very lucky in this community. The Community Foundation, which provides a lot of resources for nonprofits, we had a couple webinars about this topic to help nonprofits apply and make sure they knew what was available to them. And I think most groups did get one. Nevertheless, 50% cut staff, 75% cut programs. But then that last bullet, about a third added or expanded programs. We have some real heroes in this community in COVID-19, and top of my list is Beach Food Pantry, and that's why I'm so glad that you all are supporting them with the Oink and Rooster Roast. This group, well, first they had to change their whole operation, right? Because normally clients actually come into the pantry and shop, pick out the food that they want, which is an incredible, empowering model. So they had to change all of that because of contact. They had a period of time where they're getting no money, they have no volunteers because everybody's scared to leave their homes. Everybody's without a job. They're seeing 3 times as many clients as they normally do. The Beach Food Pantry really stepped up. My friend Elizabeth is the director of the pantry. I don't think she slept for 2 months. I mean, she was such a hero. So I'm so glad you all are supporting them. Hatteras Island Meals. This is the home delivered meal programs for Hatteras Island. It's like the local version of Meals on Wheels. They were doing meals 3 days a week prior to COVID. When COVID came along, rather than scaling back, they're getting fewer donations. They stepped up and they said, you know what? Our clients are the most vulnerable people. We're feeding people 5 times a week. So they stepped up. They didn't step back. And I just admire them so much for that. Interfaith Community Outreach. This is an incredible organization that helps families pay bills. If somebody's lost a job, if there's a death in the family, if there's cancer, Interfaith helps them pay the bills. Interfaith is helping families pay for childcare while schools are closed. I'm proud to say that the Community Foundation is subsidizing this. We started a COVID rapid response grants program. All of these programs that I'm listing are ones that we're supporting financially. By the way, the reason we're able to support these financially, even though donations are down, are because of those endowments. It's because of those legacy gifts. We have people who gave us gifts 5 years ago, 1 year ago, 25 years ago. Well, we're using those. That's why they started these legacy funds, these endowments, to help our community when no one else can give. That's how we're still running, is because of these forever gifts. So Interfaith is helping families first just pay for food and now pay for childcare. Dare County Arts Council sees all of these artists out of work. So they start virtual programming and an online store for artists to sell their stuff. Really innovative, awesome. The YMCA started a program where school-age kids can go during the school day and participate in their virtual learning. This is a godsend for working families. I mean, how do you possibly help your 8-year-old, do online classes when you have to go to a restaurant to work? You can't do that. So YMCA is doing that. And they're giving scholarships to families who can't afford it. I'm very proud to say the Community Foundation is paying for that. And that's because of generous people who have given us legacy gifts. Mustang Outreach. This is an incredible program that's helping students with special needs get extra tutoring, that one-on-one support that you wouldn't otherwise get with remote learning and learning at home. So we have some real heroes in this community. Looking ahead, there's so much uncertainty. We don't know what's coming with COVID. Are we going to have another wave? Are we going to get a vaccine soon? Is the economy going to stay strong? Are we going to shut down again? I find that the nonprofit sector just has existential uncertainty about how they're going to raise money ahead. Yet many of these nonprofits are seeing more clients, helping more people than ever before. They're having to adapt their operations. They're having to do virtual programs. It's a very challenging time. But there may be some opportunities. We're seeing nonprofits, just like businesses, just like families, we're all being innovative, right? We're all adapting. So nonprofits are innovating too. We do have some small nonprofits that are folding. We've had 2, at least in this community that I know of, close up shop during COVID forever. And that's a terrible loss. We talked about the challenges of having such a crowded nonprofit field. If this COVID emergency inspires some of those small groups to work together more, maybe even consider mergers, that might ultimately be a healthy thing for our nonprofit sector, maybe. So we'll see if we as a community can take advantage of that opportunity. Prior to COVID, we were seeing cuts in government funding to different groups. Well, now we're seeing a lot of government funding to nonprofit groups. How you can help. So this is where you as Rotarians, as volunteers, as donors can step up and help our nonprofits and help your neighbors. Virtual fundraisers. I mean, you all were talking about, how your oink and rooster roast is so different, and you hope that despite not having a social aspect that people will still participate. Nonprofits are trying these virtual fundraisers. I know they're not as much fun as getting dressed up. I miss getting dressed up and going to these things. I know they're not as much fun. Please still give. We need to support our nonprofits. As much as I love the food pantry and those groups that we talked about before, we can't forget about our arts groups. We can't forget about our culture groups, our history groups. Some of these history groups are telling the stories that are uniquely Outer Banks, the Wright brothers, the King Island Life Saving Station, Chickamauga, the Graveyard of the Atlantic. All these things that make our home so special, we can't forget about these groups. And consider, if you can, a sustaining our legacy gift. Because these are the gifts that will give year after year after year and help these nonprofits even when nobody has the cash or the wherewithal to write a check. We need to think in our community about how we build resiliency after a storm, through a pandemic, through whatever challenges are going to come our way. And I think you as community leaders who think about this stuff all the time, who take your 4-way test and just always think about how can we help. I think you all give more brain energy to these problems than anybody else. And so I would ask you to think about how can we help our community be strong through all of these crises. So with that, my last slide is just my contact information, including my cell number. Goodness, I've talked so much. What questions do you all have? What ideas do you all have? What concerns? Do you see opportunities? What do you all think?
I have a question about when you invest things, especially right now, because who knows what's going to happen month to month or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you move things into safer? Like, who decides how that money gets invested?
That is such a savvy question. Thank you for asking that. So we have an investment committee on our board who are people who are really very experienced and knowledgeable about investments. And we have an investment manager. Right now we're using a firm called Trust Company of the South. Because our endowments are perpetual funds, we do take more risks in that investment than I do with my retirement fund, for example, because I want to retire one day. But our endowments are going to be here for generations and generations. So it is a riskier, portfolio than what I personally have. But that said, our average rate of return has been 9%. We've almost completely rebounded from the losses this year. So the market definitely has its ups and downs. When we determine how much a fund can give, we look at the rolling 3-year average to smooth out any artificial ups and downs. So it is challenging, but we've met so many times with our investment managers through this crisis. Our finance committee really looks at this, and they feel like that long-term, disciplined, highly diverse strategy is the best one. So it's a real mix of domestic, foreign, small cap, large cap, real estate funds. That's a real mix of different kinds of funds. I don't choose day to day. Today I'll invest in Facebook. Tomorrow I'll invest in Home Depot. We invest much more broadly than that in funds as opposed to individual businesses. Any other questions?
What about Corn Creek Island? How are things down there?
Corn Creek. Does everybody know the Corn Creek joke? So we still have 30 families in trailers.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little. Do you have a minute for me to tell you a little
Sure.
story about these trailers? So this is actually a terrible story, and I hate to tell it, but it's true, and I want to be authentic with you. So the trailers, the grant that Hyde County got for the trailers came with a condition, which is that the trailers needed to be taken off the island if the island was evacuated. So they evacuated the island officially for Hurricane, what's its name?
The big eye.
Yes, Hurricane I. These families who were displaced already had to leave the trailers, so we could take the trailers off island and bring them back. So that's terrible, and that's a problem, but it was the only solution we had for temporary housing for these folks. And as you all know, housing is such a challenge across the Outer Banks, and I think 5 times more so on Ocracoke because it's so small and there's so few houses where people can stay temporarily. But our goal was not to send people away from Ocracoke to never return. It was to try to keep people there. So it's an imperfect solution. We are still working on home repairs with an organization called UMCOR, United Methodist Committee on Relief. Fantastic organization that brings groups of volunteers to help with home repairs and home rebuilds. Well, then COVID hit. Ocracoke is closed again to visitors, so they can't get volunteers to work on these construction projects. And even when it was open again for volunteers, a lot of their volunteers are older or just people who don't want to take the risk of living in group housing and being on construction sites. I'm very sorry to say that the rate of the rebuild is slowed because of that. And that's a terrible consequence, but we're still there. We're in it for the long haul. We're in it until we run out of money. And as long as we have money, we're going to help. And there's need, we're going to help people rebuild. But COVID has complicated everything.
Yeah. Good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to put my mask on.
All right. Thank you so much, Lorelei. That was, And it always amazes me how much our community just really sticks together, and I'm glad to see.
Just,
Now you had to run it for them. They got to look at me now, Stan. So,
back to reality.
before we do our 50-50 raffle, does anyone have any comments, any announcements for the club? All right. George, would you have one of our lovely ladies here draw? And Mary, I don't know if we introduced you, but
Oh, that's all
believe
right. I'm
you
here
helped
supporting
Lorelei.
Lorelei.
Pick one and don't show us that one.
Okay.
So I'll let this one of these.
Okay, now pick two more and read us the last four.
Okay. So the two are 3895 and 3945.
Whoever bought after me.
3895.
895.
So 3895 and 3945? I have 3945.
All right.
There's a skydiving.
All right,
You increased your chances.
You should definitely do the skydiving.
All right.
Pick something out.
All right.
What you got there?
Back one. Back one.
All right, hey, there you go.
This is the,
Pick one
this
anyone.
is the steep one.
You there? Okay.
Maybe I can see.
All right. And read the one.
Let's-
Okay, 3883.
All right, I like it.
Did you?
I
Did you?
Again?
Again?
Again.
With you.
Well, you buy $10 in tickets, guys.
I know,
I mean,
I know.
And may you keep
All right.
losing. May you keep not getting the right card.
well, that's,
Turn this, let me get the camera on this.
We want the person to get the ace of spades to about only 2 tickets.
We want to zoom in on this.
I don't know how much we collected today, but we were up around 550. So.
Don't do it, Judge.
Don't do it, don't do it. Oh!
Did you get it?
I got it.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
All right.
Whoa, you
Wow,
can't get
wow.
it.
You go that way.
He's so excited.
I'm excited. I'm like, that's a double check.
So, all right.
Well, all right. Well, that makes my day.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
I
bring
know a
that
great
down.
organization you could give that.
Oh, that's funny. All right, well,
Wow.
thanks, Lorelei.
Thank you.
Lori's gonna be upset.
Anytime you want to talk, just come.
You know who has the money now, so call him.
All right, well, with that, let's adjourn with the four-way test.
So
The things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill or better friendship? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Let's adjourn with our motto. Service above self. Thanks, guys, and we will see you via Zoom
Next week.
next week. Good to see everybody.
It's nice to meet you, Jim.
Thank you so much.
Really good.
They're all losers, they're all on the table.
She don't sit here.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever considered joining? I've got a, he is Scott, 'cause he's a.